What's going on, people? So today, we're going to be talking about DC Fandom. DC Fandom, for those who are unaware, was an event held over the past weekend, and I guess you could sort of call this the culmination of all things DC. So whether you are a fan of the comics, television series, movies, or video games, there was something to enjoy at this event. Now, before we dive into my particular thoughts on it, I want to tip my hat off to every single person who's involved with the creation of DC Fandom. 2020 has been a rough year for us all. I think we can agree to that. But DC Fandom I want to highlight, considering it was the very first event of these, now we're into the dozens of convention experiences at home that really felt like I was watching Comic-Con, like I was watching E3. And I know it sounds kind of first world problem-y to say, but a lot of these events haven't really been handled the best. And in some situations, it makes you miss the days of E3 where it was just one event, and even though it was a bunch of information, it was all centralized into a couple of days. DC Fandom gave me that experience, and I just want to say thank you to everybody involved. Now, when it comes down to DC Fandom, like I mentioned, there is a lot of stuff to cover. So there are things ranging from different universes to the multiverses, and I'm not going to go ahead and recap every single thing that was there, mainly due to the fact that some of them I am not interested in, and a lot of them is kind of just more of the same things we already know, or they're just so early in production and they cannot talk about this stuff given, the world has been shut down for a couple of months. But there are three things that I do want to highlight that I found really interesting and engaging. Gotham Knights, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and the Batman. So, talking about the video games, since this is a video game-centric channel, Gotham Knights, the game that's, I want to say this has probably been the worst kept secret in gaming next to the Xbox Series S. Like, it's the game that everybody knew was coming. It's the game that everyone knew was going to be happening. And it's just like they waited years before they announced it. But now we've got an official word. Gotham Knights coming to us from WB Games Montreal. For those who are unaware, these are the developers behind the polarizing Batman Arkham Origins. And they're working on what is essentially going to be a co-op Batman family experience. You're going to be able to play as multiple characters from the Bat family, ranging from Red Hood, Robin, Nightwing, and Batgirl. And I gotta say, my first initial impressions when I saw the trailer of it is I wasn't digging it, because I was looking at the vibe of it and, it seemed kind of interesting. But when you look at a lot of the games that are in this realm, talking about co-op online focused experiences, that's essentially code for games as a service. This game is going to get better when we hit the year 1, year 2 update. And that wasn't something I was feeling. But upon closer inspection and actually watching the developer gameplay behind it, it looks pretty decent, man. It definitely does look like they're taking that Arkham experience, they're crafting it around these particular characters, and they're giving you that experience, but being able to play it with one of your friends. So that right there is actually really interesting. I want to definitely see where they go with this and where they take it and how they are going to the story, the experience they're going to give you. Because when you're playing as different characters here, are some chapters limited to this particular character? Like in the gameplay demo, we saw that you were playing as Batgirl. Now, is her encounter with Mr. Freeze going to be story related, or can you swap that out with any of the other characters and the dialogue will either remain the same or they will change accordingly if they have some type of history? There's a lot of things that I really want to see more of with this game, because the Arkham series, the combat is solid. It's great. And if you could bring that to the online realm and you actually make it function well, I'm down for that. However, I just wanted to get this out on the table right now, given the track record of WB Games, the Batman series, and the fact that this is an online experience. What is the DLC situation going to be looking like? Because Arkham Knight was not the best way to handle post-release content, and then with Batman Arkham Origins, they focused on releasing post-release content as opposed to fixing, fundamental bugs and glitches and crashes that were in the console versions of the games. So the jury is still out as far as how they're going to handle that type of experience. But if it remains that type of, a single-player focused, but with drop-in, drop-out co-op where you can play as your friends, then I think I'll have some fun with it. Now, moving into another game, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Now, this is very interesting because we had been wondering for the past couple of years what Rocksteady was working on. You know, there were rumors that they were going to be working on a brand new Batman game, and then there were rumors that they were doing a Superman game, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there were talks about them doing Suicide Squad. So it was kind of up in the air, and then they unveiled that they are working on Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. We're going to be playing as members of the Suicide Squad, trying to kill an evil version of Superman, and since it is titled Kill the Justice League, I assume you'll be going up against Wonder Woman, maybe Martian Manhunter, Cyborg, Flash, probably not Batman. But there's a lot of interesting things to talk about with this game, even though there aren't any, there's not any tangible footage for us to really assess. The only thing we have is a CG trailer, and y'all know how I feel about CG trailers. CG trailers have their place. Don't get it twisted, but just with the overabundance of CG trailers that we see, it kind of seems like we're seeing more of that as opposed to, the things that really matter, like actually seeing what is indicative of the final gameplay release. So CG trailers, like I said, they got their place, but if it's not telling me what I'm going to see in the experience, and it's just like, nah, don't do that. Don't tease me. And the game is coming out in 2022, so it's still a little bit of a ways off, depending on how much of the development it got pushed back, given the situation. It remains to be seen, but 2022, that's going to be 7 years since the release of Batman Arkham Knight. 7 years working on a Suicide Squad game? I don't buy that. I definitely do think they had another project in development that got scrapped. There are talks about how they were originally working on Gotham Knights, and then they kind of shifted gears with Warner Brothers Montreal, and they ended up working on Gotham Knights while Rocksteady took up the mantle of Suicide Squad. And then there's that rumor Damian Wayne game that was in the mix, so it's just kind of all over the place as far as development is concerned, but I'm not really losing sleep about that, considering we're never going to see that game materialize, and we just got to focus on what we have right now. So with the game itself, they're talking about how it's going to be, again, another drop-in, drop-out co-op experience, this time with 4 players as opposed to the 2 in Gotham Knights, which is very interesting. I wonder what the design shift behind why this one is 2 players and this one is 4 players. But from what they were talking, they were saying it's essentially, just going to be a single player focused narrative, just with drop in, drop out co-op. So if you're playing this by yourself, you can. It's just that your allies are going to be controlled by the AI. So, at first I thought, okay, that's paving the way towards games as a service, blah, 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 blah. But if it's literally just like that and the missions are structured where it's still a story and not like, what's that other superhero game that's coming out in like less than 2 weeks that really feels like it's just an online experience and they have the Avengers? Yeah, if it's literally structured where it's like a single player story, such as Resident Evil 5 or even something like Left 4 Dead, where it's literally just drop in, drop out experience, then I'm actually okay with that. I just want to see more of it, because your first impressions are very important, but it kind of sucks when your first impressions could be so different compared to your later impressions when you don't know anything about the game. All we have is just this CGI trailer and you're playing as the Suicide Squad. So we'll just have to see as far as that is concerned, whether it leans more into games as a service or it's just going to be that online focused experience with post-release content. Now moving into some of the other things surrounding that game that are really interesting is in regards to the continuity where this takes place, because as many of y'all know, this game is the next game from Rocksteady, but it's also the continuation in the Arkhamverse, which is very peculiar because if you look at some of the things that are happening here, like Deadshot, for example, is black, as opposed to in the Arkham games, he was white. So I don't know if this is just a new iteration of the character, or if there's some type of story reason to explain why he's white here and why he's black there, who knows? But it's so funny because when Gotham Knights was first unveiled, we all thought like, okay, this is going to be the continuation of the Arkham series, because Batman, spoiler alert, Arkham Knight, that nigga probably dead. So just to have them take up the mantle seems interesting. Oh my God, is that Batgirl walking? Yep. So it's just like, this is confirmed to be in its own little pocket of the universe. And then the Suicide Squad game, how that's going to fit in continuity wise, it'll be really interesting to see. But again, this just kind of, it kind of just adds more fuel to the fire of the whole DC multiverse thing, where we're just going to do things here and yeah, we'll just call it a multiverse. It's kind of like our get out of jail free card for continuity, unfortunately. Speaking of get out of jail free for continuity, moving into the best part of the DC fandom, in my personal opinion, our first official extended look at the Batman. Now, for those who are unaware, who don't really follow DC, the Batman is an upcoming, I guess you can call it the 48th reboot we've had of the character. This time it's being directed by Matt Reeves, who gave us the most recent Planet of the Apes movies, and it's starring Robert Pattinson as the Dark Knight. Now, this project's been gestating for the longest time. It originally started out as Ben Affleck's solo project. Well, it's kind of like a vanity project. He was going to star as Batman, write it, produce it, direct it, sell it at trade shows, whatever. But obviously, Ben Affleck, he had been going through a lot of things in his personal life over the past couple of years, so he just made an executive decision to step back for the production. And while I would have loved to see what Ben Affleck would have done with the character, I mean, it's going to sound contradictory, I know. Even though I was not a big fan of the Batfleck character, I do really enjoy Ben Affleck as an actor and as a talent, and, I like a lot of the stuff that he's worked on. So to see him tackle Batman in that type of capacity, I thought would have been interesting to see. But hey, Hollywood rarely goes the way you wish. Your dream team collaborations, rarely do they materialize. In most situations, we get stuff we don't even ask for. But hey, Hollywood's kind of like failing upwards. That's how it works. Matt Reeves taking over the production, I knew there was going to be something interesting about it, because you don't get somebody like Matt Reeves to work on a Batman movie. You know what I'm saying? It's just kind of like, why? And then when you start hearing him talk about it, you get really interested in what it is. And then from what we've seen, it's basically exactly what he was pitching, when he got put onto the project like 2 years ago. This is essentially going to be a year 2 story for Bruce Wayne. So it's not at the start of his career. It's not the origin story. And what's really interesting, and I do implore you guys to go check out the actual DC Fandom talk with Matt Reeves. He was essentially saying, like, how I'm going to differentiate this is we've already seen the origin of Batman. It's been done to death countless times. But what we haven't seen is what happens after he's been Batman for a year and a half. Like, what comes with that learning process? He's already learned to master the fear of the dark. So what comes after that? And I think it's a really interesting place that we haven't explored with the Bruce Wayne character on film. We almost got that in the Nolan movies. Like, we had Batman Begins as the origin story, and then we had The Dark Knight, which just kind of, he's like, yeah, I've been doing this for a while, so there's not much growing. And then Rises happen, and it caps off this journey of Batman when he's only been Batman for like 2 years. So seeing them do it like this, I think will be very great. But one thing I want to stress is, for this to be like a major success, I want to see this have legs. I want to see it have longevity. I want to get to the point where we actually have the Batman universe, because we always get like hampered. Either it's we get it in the very beginning, or then we have a situation like Batfleck where we get it like all the way when it's at its end and he's already been through Robins and stuff. Like, I want to see the genesis. I want to see the genesis of him becoming a Batman, growing as Bruce Wayne, meeting Robin, and then going through the process with that. That's been something that I think is, that's just such an untapped area in the superhero realm. Not even just talking about DC and Marvel, but just growing with a family, like that dynamic, and it continues and continues and continues, and they evolve into other personas, like going from Dick Grayson to Nightwing, and then, the story with Jason Todd and everything that happens with him. Like, are you telling me you cannot do the Red Hood story? Like, you can't build that up over like 3 movies and then I'm getting too ahead of myself here. But from what we have seen with the Batman, taking it as it is, I'm all for it. It definitely does lean into the more realism aspect of it, in terms of that it's grounded, it's dark and gritty. I know people hate to hear that words, but at the same time, I do not believe Matt Reeves is going to be sacrificing the more fantabulous spectacle of the Batman stories. You know what I'm saying? Like, Nolan, he was more grounded in realism, and it worked for that incarnation. But something was lost in the fact that, hey, you kind of have to suspend belief when it comes to certain aspects of these characters. You know what I'm saying? So if Matt Reeves can give us that experience, which is what I think he is going to do, because, this is DC and they do want to lean more into that route, and everything's becoming a lot more colorful than the muted tones of the Snyderverse. I think we're definitely in for a real treat. This is looking like it's a more visceral Batman, just him just beating the crap out of the one guy for asking who he was. It's so funny because we harped on Batfleck for being so overly aggressive and legit branding people and killing stuff, and then Robert Pattinson does it, and we were just like, yeah, it's cool because of the context. The context is key in this scenario, and for him, he's a very rough around the edges Batman trying to find his place in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, Selena Kyle is not Catwoman yet. The Penguin is not even the Penguin yet. He hates being called the Penguin. So I'm just so excited. Like, if all of this if it culminates in the way that I think it will, you know, this legit might be the best Batman movie to date, like, bar none. You don't have to make the distinction of, oh, this is a great Batman movie, but it's a shitty Bruce Wayne. Oh, this is a great Batman, but it's like in a shitty movie. You know what I'm saying? Like that sort of shtick. And I dig the vibes. I dig the vibes of this story. You know, it's kind of like Batman meets Seven and a lot of things like that. So, you know, I am all in for this. The trailer, I keep rewatching it, and it's so weird because I'm so excited for DC, which is a phrase that I have not used in the longest time. As many of y'all know, if you frequent my channel, I have not been the biggest fan of a lot of DC's recent forays into filmmaking. You know, I was not the biggest fan of the way Snyder was handling things. I found enjoyment in Wonder Woman. I found enjoyment in Aquaman. Of course, Shazam was great, and Joker was great for what it was. But I was kind of skeptical on how they would handle, like, you know, the big... It's so weird because Superman used to be the big icon of DC, and it just ended up being Batman as of, like, what, 20 years ago? So I was always skeptical on how they're going to handle this. But it seems like it's in good hands with Matt Reeves, and I just can't wait for October next year. It's going to be a long and arduous wait, but I definitely think it is going to be worth it. You know, Robert Pattinson has been a great actor. The second he was cast, I remember tweeting like, yes, this is the right move to make. And a lot of people, I got some pushback for it, but I was like, yo, Robert Pattinson is a great actor. He's got range. He's seriously got some range. So given, you know, what we know about this Matt Reeves' experience with Batman, what he's trying to craft, I think Robert Pattinson is the best actor for the job. And yeah, we'll just see if he sticks around for a couple of movies. Hopefully, if this all works out. I know I just sound so giddy and optimistic, but it's so weird. It's like the first time in a while, man. First time in a while. Oh God. But yeah, so those were all my basic thoughts as far as DC fandom is concerned. I have another video coming up talking about my overall thoughts on DC on film as a whole, because they're in a really weird place right now where they're juggling like 3 different continuities of things, but I'll elaborate more on that later. But yeah, tell me more down below in the comment section about what you guys thought about DC fandom. What were some of your more interesting takeaways? And yeah, if there's anything else that you guys want me to cover from that event, comment down below because I might have missed it. So from me to you for now, my name is NGS signing out. Like always, I will catch you guys later. Peace.